"This is Captain Dean Calloway," I said, my voice surprisingly steady even to my own ears. There was a brief pause on the other end. "Captain Calloway, we weren't expecting to hear from you. We thought—" "Is the offer still on the table?" I interrupted, cutting to the chase. "For you, Captain?" The voice on the other end was suddenly much warmer, more enthusiastic. "Absolutely. The director has made it clear you have a spot whenever you want. We can have you in Houston by the end of the day." "Good," I said, my voice firm. "I'll be there." She thought she could walk all over me, belittle me, and cheat on me, and I'd just, what? Take it lying down and be the good, loyal husband who's always there for her. Fuck that. I'll put her in her place. She's just baggage that's been holding me down and tethering me to this mundane earth for so long. I'm leaving and I'm not even glancing back. And when she's begging for my forgiveness like the slimy dog she is, I'll just shoo her away. Our apartment was comfortable. That's the word, I guess. Cozy. Filled with pictures of Emma and me, all smiles and sunshine. Vacations, holidays. That time we tried to make a soufflé, and it ended up looking like a deflated football. It was us, plastered all over the walls. But if you looked closely, you'd see me too. Tucked away in corners, on bookshelves. Little reminders of what I really wanted. Model airplanes, carefully assembled and painted. Aviation books, their spines cracked from countless readings. And, on the wall above my desk, a framed photo of me in my flight suit, grinning like an idiot the day I got my wings. I held the letter in my hand, the crisp paper feeling strangely heavy. NASA, again. "They called again?" I said, trying to sound casual. "Another invitation to the astronaut candidate program." Emma didn't even look up from her phone. She was probably scrolling through Instagram, looking at other people's perfect lives. "That's nice, honey," she said, her voice flat. "Are you going to frame this one too?" Ouch! That one stung. I walked over to my desk, the drawer stuffed with similar letters. Rejection letters, in a way. Self-inflicted rejection letters. I was thinking about it," I said, the words feeling flimsy even to me. She finally looked up, a flicker of annoyance in her eyes. "Thinking about what? Turning them down again? You always do." "It's just the timing," I said, trying to explain, to make her understand. "It's a big commitment, years of training, away from you." It sounded weak, even to my own ears. "You promised," she said, her voice sharper now. "You said you wanted a life here, with me." "I do," I insisted, and I meant it. I did love her, but sometimes I wonder what it would be like to actually go up there. I looked towards the photo, at the younger, more hopeful version of myself. He didn't look weighed down. Emma let out a sigh that seemed to say, "We have been over this 1,000 times." "You have your whole life to wonder, Dean," she said, her tone final. She patted the seat next to me. "Come on, sit down. Let's focus on reality." Reality? Was this it? Was this my reality? The comfortable apartment, the routine, the settling? Was I settling? The thought settled in my gut like a cold stone. Was I just giving up? I looked at the photo of me in my flight suit one last time, the boundless optimism in that younger man's eyes. Then, with a sigh, I opened the drawer and slid the NASA letter on top of the others. A graveyard of dreams. I forced a smile, the kind that feels like your face is cracking, and went to join Emma on the couch. She snuggled up against me, and I put my arm around her. It felt right and wrong, all at the same time. This was my life. For now, at least. This was my life. The simulator was my sanctuary. Inside this metal cocoon, surrounded by projected landscapes and the simulated roar of jet engines, I felt free. It was the closest I could get to the stars, without actually leaving the ground. And today, I needed that feeling more than ever. The scenario was a nightmare. A multi-system failure during a high-altitude, high-speed maneuver over enemy territory. Most pilots would have panicked. Most pilots did panic, judging by the mission logs. But not me. I thrived under pressure. It focused me, sharpened my senses, made me feel alive. I wrestled the virtual jet through a series of evasive maneuvers, my hands dancing over the controls, my mind calculating angles, speeds, and probabilities with a speed that bordered on precognitive. I could feel the aircraft, anticipate its responses, become one with the machine. It was a dance, a deadly ballet performed at Mach 2. "Bogey on your 6, Calloway! Evasive action!" The voice of the simulator operator crackled in my headset, but I was already moving. I rolled the jet into a tight barrel roll, pulling G's that would have made a lesser pilot black out. The simulated missile streaked past, missing by inches. I neutralized the threat, completed the objective, and brought the crippled virtual aircraft back to base, landing it with a smoothness that belied the simulated chaos I'd just endured. The simulator hissed open, and I unstrapped myself, my body drenched in sweat, my heart still pounding. But a grin stretched across my face. That was exhilarating. Colonel Miller, my CO, stood there, arms crossed, a rare smile playing on his lips. He wasn't a man easily impressed. He'd seen it all, done it all, flown everything from Cold War-era fighters to cutting-edge stealth aircraft. "Calloway," he said, his voice a low rumble. "That was textbook, absolutely textbook. You've got instincts I haven't seen in years." "Thank you, sir," I replied, trying to sound modest, but failing miserably. "Just trying to stay sharp." He chuckled, a dry, rasping sound. "Sharp? Son, you're operating at a level beyond most pilots ever reach. You're a natural. A goddamn prodigy." He paused, his eyes narrowing slightly. "NASA keeps asking about you, you know?" Here it was, the elephant in the room, or in this case, the rocket in the hangar. I hesitated, searching for the right words. "I'm flattered, sir, but—" He raised a hand, cutting me off. "But you've got commitments. I understand." He didn't sound judgmental, just knowing. He'd been around long enough to see this pattern before. The brilliant pilot, tethered to the ground by something or someone. "Family, right?" I nodded, feeling a familiar pang of guilt, resentment. I wasn't sure. It was a tangled mess of emotions I didn't like to unpack. "Look, Calloway," Miller continued, his voice softening slightly. "I get it. Life happens. We make choices. But don't let those commitments blind you to your potential, son. Some men are meant to fly, and some are meant to touch the stars." He clapped me on the shoulder, the gesture surprisingly gentle for a man who looked like he could wrestle a bear and win. I flinched a bit internally. His words were resonating a bit too closely. Am I letting her hold me back? The question echoed in my mind, a persistent, nagging doubt. Is it Emma or is it me? Am I just afraid? Afraid of failing, afraid of succeeding, afraid of leaving the comfortable, predictable life I'd built, afraid of the vast, unforgiving emptiness of space, afraid of everything. It was easier to blame Emma, to tell myself that I was sacrificing my dream for her, for us. It was a convenient excuse, a shield against the terrifying truth that maybe, just maybe, I was the one holding myself back. Colonel Miller was still talking, pulling me from the spiral of my thoughts. And I'm not just saying this to blow smoke, Calloway. I've reviewed the mission parameters for the Ares 6 program. Mars. First manned mission. It's a hell of a challenge. The kind of challenge that requires a pilot with exceptional skill, unwavering focus, and, well, Let's just say it takes a special kind of crazy to volunteer for something like that." He gave me a pointed look. "And in all my years of doing this, not many pilots make the cut, and fewer still are being considered as mission commander. You're at the top of a very short list." I stared at him, momentarily speechless. Mars. It was the ultimate dream, the pinnacle of achievement for any pilot. And he was telling me I was top of the list? He smiled, a knowing glint in his eyes. "Just to be clear, Calloway, there are not many pilots who could handle a mission to Mars. You're top of the list, so when you inevitably change your mind, give me a call." He turned and walked away, leaving me standing there, the hum of the simulator filling the silence. Mars. The word echoed in my mind. A siren song, a challenge, a promise. I looked around the simulator, at the complex array of controls, the realistic projections, the sense of limitless possibility. This was where I belonged. This was who I was. A pilot, an explorer, a man meant for the sky. And maybe, just maybe, a man meant for something more. But the image of Emma's face, her disapproving frown, flashed in my mind. The comfortable weight of her arm around me on the couch. The familiar routine of our life together. The safety net. The internal battle raged. Duty versus desire. Love versus ambition. Fear versus freedom. I closed my eyes, took a deep breath, and tried to imagine myself on Mars. Standing on the red soil, looking back in the distant blue marble of Earth. Was that my future? Or was it just a fantasy? A dream I'd keep locked away in a drawer, along with all those unopened letters? I didn't have an answer. Not yet. But the seed had been planted. And Colonel Miller's words, they were a powerful fertilizer. The flight back from the training exercise had been unexpectedly smooth. A mechanical issue with one of the jets had grounded the whole squadron, and they'd decided to cut the exercise short. I wasn't complaining. A surprise afternoon with Emma sounded pretty good. Maybe we could order takeout, watch a movie, just relax. It felt like we hadn't done that in ages. I let myself into the apartment, the familiar click of the lock, usually a comforting sound. Today, it just echoed in the unsettling quiet. "Honey, I'm back!" I called out, tossing my keys onto the small table by the door. "Training got cut short?" Silence. That wasn't unusual. Emma often wore headphones while she worked from home, but there was usually some noise. The tapping of her keyboard, the murmur of a video call, something. This was different. Then I heard it. A muffled sound coming from the bedroom. A giggle? A moan? My stomach clenched. I told myself it was nothing. Maybe she was on the phone watching a funny video. Maybe... "Emma!" I called again, walking towards the bedroom, my steps hesitant, my voice losing its cheerful edge. Each step felt heavier, like I was wading through quicksand. Another sound. Definitely a moan. My blood ran cold. I knew with a sickening certainty what I was about to find. But some part of me, some foolish, hopeful part, still clung to the possibility of a rational explanation. I reached the bedroom door, my hand hovering over the knob. I took a deep breath and pushed it open. The scene that greeted me was brutal. It was like something out of a bad movie, so cliché it would have been comical if it wasn't my life unraveling before my eyes. Emma, my Emma, was in our bed, tangled in the sheets, with another man. A man I'd never seen before. He was ordinary. Good-looking, I guess, in a generic sort of way. But nothing special. Certainly not worth throwing away everything we had. Emma gasped, her eyes widening in shock, and she scrambled to pull the sheets up, covering herself. "Dean! What are you doing here?" Her voice was a mixture of surprise and guilt? Shame? I couldn't tell. I couldn't process anything beyond the raw, visceral betrayal. The man, Mark, I would later learn, was scrambling out of bed, his face a mask of panic. "Look, man, he started, but I cut him off. "Don't," I said, my voice surprisingly calm, almost devoid of emotion. I didn't want to hear his excuses, his apologies, his pathetic attempts to justify himself. It didn't matter. Emma, still clutching the sheets, looked at me with wide, pleading eyes. "Dean, I can explain." I shook my head, a slow, deliberate movement. "No," I said, my voice flat. "You don't need to." There was nothing to explain. The scene before me was explanation enough. The strange thing was, I didn't feel anger. Not yet, at least. What I felt was emptiness. A hollow, aching void where my heart used to be. It was like all the air had been sucked out of the room, leaving me gasping for breath. I looked at Emma, really looked at her, for the first time in I didn't know how long. And I saw a stranger. I saw the restlessness, the dissatisfaction, the contempt. It was all there, in her eyes, in the set of her mouth, in the way she avoided my gaze. "You were never going to go away anyway," she said, her voice filled with a strange mix of defiance and accusation. "You're always talking, but you were never going to go to space. You're too scared to leave." Her words hit me like a physical blow, not because they were unexpected, but because they confirmed my own deepest fears. I had been scared. Scared of leaving her, scared of the unknown, scared of failing. But her saying it, throwing it in my face like that, with such casual cruelty, it was the final nail in the coffin. She doesn't even care, I thought, the realization washing over me like a wave of ice water. She doesn't even love me. Maybe she never had. Maybe I'd just been fooling myself, clinging to an illusion of a relationship that had died long ago. I didn't yell. I didn't scream. I didn't break down. I just stood there, looking at the wreckage of my life, feeling nothing but a profound sense of disillusionment. The anger would come later, I knew. The grief, the pain, the what-ifs. But right now, all I felt was done. I was done with the lies, done with the excuses, done with the charade. I was done with Emma. I turned and walked out of the bedroom, out of the apartment, without a backward glance. I didn't know where I was going, but I knew I couldn't stay there. Not another second. It was over. And, in a strange, twisted way, I felt relieved. The Band-Aid had been ripped off, the illusion had been shattered, and now, finally, I was free. Even if I didn't know what to do with that freedom yet. I don't remember how long I walked. Hours, probably. Aimlessly wandering the streets, the city lights blurring into a meaningless kaleidoscope of color and sound. I ended up back at the apartment, though I don't remember making the conscious decision to return. It was late. The building was dark and silent. My key still worked. The apartment felt alien, cold and empty, even though it was filled with the detritus of our shared life. Our life. A life that was now over. I walked through the rooms, my footsteps echoing in the stillness. The mess from earlier, the clothes, the dishes, it was still there. A testament to what? Our carelessness? Our unhappiness? I didn't know. I didn't care. I went into the bedroom. The bed was unmade, the sheets still tangled from their encounter. I felt a flicker of something. Not anger, not jealousy. Just disgust. I stripped the bed, stuffing the sheets into a garbage bag. I didn't want to touch them. I didn't want to see them. Then I went to my desk, the one in the corner of the living room, the one where I'd kept my dreams hidden away. The drawer was still open, the NASA letters spilling out like accusing fingers. She was right, I thought, sitting down heavily in the chair. I was scared. Scared of losing her, scared of failing, scared of the vastness of space, scared of the unknown, scared of everything. I picked up one of the letters, the most recent one, the crisp paper, the official seal, the promise of something. More. Something beyond the suffocating confines of this apartment, this life. But what did that fear get me? I thought, crumpling the letter in my hand. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. It got me betrayed. It got me heartbroken. It got me a front-row seat to the destruction of my own life. I looked around the apartment, at the photos on the walls, the souvenirs from our trips, the little knickknacks that represented our shared history. It all felt meaningless, empty, like props in a play that had just closed. Time to stop being afraid, I thought. A new resolve hardening within me, a cold, clear certainty. It was time to stop living a half-life, a life dictated by fear and compromise. It was time to live. I stood up, feeling a strange sense of purpose. I went to the closet and grabbed a duffel bag. I started packing, methodically and efficiently. Clothes, toiletries, essentials, nothing more. I didn't pack the photos. I didn't pack the mementos. I didn't pack anything that reminded me of Emma, of us. I left it all behind. The past was the past, and I was done with it. I walked back to the desk, my steps feeling lighter now, more purposeful. I picked up the NASA letter, the one I'd crumpled in my hand. I smoothed it out, carefully, and looked at it for a long moment. The invitation, the opportunity, the escape. I folded the letter and put it in my pocket. It was the only thing from my old life I was taking with me. A reminder of what I was capable of. A reminder of what I was going to do. I zipped up the bag, slung it over my shoulder, and walked to the door. I paused, my hand on the knob, and took one last look around the apartment. It was just a place, a collection of things. It wasn't a home. Not anymore. I opened the door and walked out, closing it behind me without a backward glance. The click of the lock echoed in the empty hallway. It was a final sound, a clean break, and for the first time in a long time, I felt free. The fear was still there, a faint tremor in the background, but it was overshadowed by something else, something stronger, something hopeful. It was the beginning of something new, and I was ready. The motel room was as generic as they come. Thin walls, scratchy sheets, the faint smell of stale cigarette smoke clinging to everything. It didn't matter. It was just a place to sleep, a temporary stop on the way to somewhere else, anywhere else. I woke up early. The first rays of dawn painting the dingy curtains a sickly shade of orange. I hadn't slept much. My mind was racing, replaying the events of the previous day. The image of Emma and him burned into my memory. But beneath the anger and the hurt, there was something else. A sense of clarity. A resolve I hadn't felt in years. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at my phone. It was time. I dialed the number, the one I'd memorized but never dared to call, the one that represented everything I'd ever dreamed of, everything I'd sacrificed. It rang twice, then a crisp, professional voice answered. NASA Astronaut Candidate Program, how may I direct your call? This is Captain Dean Calloway, I said, my voice surprisingly steady even to my own ears. I'm calling about the astronaut candidate program. There was a brief pause, a slight hesitation on the other end. Captain Calloway, we weren't expecting to hear from you. We thought... Is the offer still on the table? I interrupted, cutting to the chase. I didn't want to hear their assumptions, their apologies, their anything. I just needed to know. For you, Captain? The voice on the other end was suddenly much warmer, more enthusiastic. Absolutely, The director has made it clear you have a spot whenever you want. We can have you in Houston by the end of the day." Houston. The words sent a jolt of adrenaline through me. It was real. It was happening. "Good," I said, my voice firm. "I'll be there." I hung up the phone, and for the first time since I didn't know when, I felt a genuine smile spread across my face. It wasn't a happy smile, not yet, but it was a smile of determination, of purpose. No more looking back, I thought, standing up and stretching, feeling the stiffness in my muscles from the uncomfortable motel bed. No more second-guessing, no more what-ifs. This was it. I was finally choosing me, my dream, my future. And nothing, absolutely nothing, was going to stop me. I looked in the mirror, not really recognizing myself. The bags under my eyes, the stubble, sure, but it was more than that. It was the look in my eyes. It was time to move forward. Houston, Johnson Space Center. It was a world away from the sleepy suburban life I'd left behind. A world of cutting-edge technology, intense training, and the constant, exhilarating hum of ambition. It was exactly where I needed to be. The training? It was brutal, grueling, relentless. They pushed us to our absolute limits, physically and mentally. Centrifuge training that simulated the crushing G-forces of launch and re-entry, leaving me dizzy and nauseated. Underwater simulations, mimicking the weightlessness of space, testing our dexterity and problem-solving skills in an alien environment. Survival training in the harsh desert, pushing our endurance and resourcefulness to the breaking point. Classroom lectures on orbital mechanics, astrophysics, and spacecraft systems, filling our brains with a torrent of information. And I loved every minute of it. "Push yourself harder!" the instructors would yell, their voices echoing in the training facilities. "You're not on Earth anymore. You're in space. You have to adapt. You have to survive." Some of the candidates cracked under the pressure. They couldn't handle the G-forces, the claustrophobia, the sheer intensity of the program. "I can't breathe," one candidate gasped during a particularly grueling centrifuge session, his face pale and clammy. "Just keep going," I said, my voice grimly determined, even though my own body was screaming in protest. I wasn't going to break. I couldn't break. I had something to prove. To myself more than anyone else. I excelled in every aspect of the training. The physical challenges, the academic work, the simulations. I tackled them all with a focus and intensity I hadn't known I possessed. It was like a fire had been lit within me, burning away all the doubt, all the hesitation, all the fear. "Calloway, you're exceeding expectations," one of the instructors said, shaking his head in disbelief after I'd aced a particularly difficult simulation. "Again." "I have to," I replied, my voice hoarse. It wasn't just about passing the tests. It was about proving to myself that I was capable of this, that I deserved this. The other candidates started to look at me differently, with respect, with awe, with a hint of fear. "He's a machine," I overheard one of them say. "He doesn't even break a sweat." They didn't understand. It wasn't that I didn't feel the pain, the exhaustion, the sheer terror of some of the simulations. It was that I embraced it. I welcomed it. Every ache, every burn, every moment of exhaustion, it was a reminder that I was alive, that I was pushing myself beyond my limits, that I was finally pursuing my dream. It's better than the emptiness I felt before, I thought, pushing myself through another set of grueling exercises. The emptiness of a life lived for someone else. A life built on compromises and unfulfilled potential. That emptiness was gone, replaced by a burning fire, a fierce determination to succeed. The final selection for the Ares' 6th mission was looming, the ultimate prize, A trip to Mars. The culmination of everything I'd ever worked for. And I knew, with a certainty that resonated deep within my bones, that I was going to be on that crew. I had to be. My quarters at NASA were Spartan, to say the least. A small, functional room, with a bed, a desk, and a tiny bathroom. It was a far cry from the comfortable apartment I'd shared with Emma, but it felt cleaner, less cluttered, less burdened. I was sitting at the desk, staring at my laptop screen. I'd set up a video call, not to a person, but to a ghost. My old phone number. Emma's number, really. I hadn't deleted it, hadn't blocked it. I wasn't sure why. Maybe I wanted to see if she'd try to contact me. Maybe I wanted to... I didn't know. The generic answering machine message played, followed by the beep. Then her voice. "Dean, it's me. Again, where are you? Why aren't you answering my calls? Please call me back." Click. The message ended. Another one. "Dean, I know I messed up, okay? But please talk to me. Are you okay? Did something happen?" Click. And another. "I'm worried sick. Everyone is. Please." Click. The message cut off abruptly. I watched the messages, my face a blank mask. I felt nothing. No anger, no sadness, no anything. It was like watching a scene from a movie, a story about someone else's life. She's worried, I thought. A flicker of something passing through me. After everything. Does she even realize what she's done? Does she understand the magnitude of her betrayal? The ripple effect it had on my entire life? I leaned back in my chair, staring at the ceiling. She sounded desperate. Pathetic, even. It was a strange contrast to the confident, almost arrogant woman who'd thrown my cowardice in my face. "You made your choice, Emma," I said softly, to the empty room. And so did I. I closed the laptop, the screen going dark, reflecting my own impassive face. I deleted the messages one by one, erasing her voice, her pleas, her existence from my life. It was done. There was no going back. There was only forward. To Houston. To training. To Mars. To the stars. And I wasn't going to let anything or anyone hold me back. Not anymore. The NASA press conference was a spectacle. Bright lights, a sea of reporters, the buzz of anticipation that filled the air. I stood on the stage, alongside the other members of the Ares 6th crew, dressed in our crisp blue flight suits. The NASA logo, the American flag, the mission patch, they all felt heavy, significant, a symbol of the incredible journey we were about to undertake. I felt calm, focused, ready. All the training, all the sacrifices, all the pain, it had all led to this moment. This was it. The NASA administrator, a tall, imposing man with a voice that commanded attention, stepped up to the podium. He spoke about the importance of the mission, the scientific advancements, the spirit of exploration. Then he came to the part I'd been waiting for. And today," he said, his voice booming through the auditorium and, I knew, across the world, "we are proud to announce the crew of the Ares 6th mission, the first ever manned mission to Mars." A wave of applause erupted from the audience. The cameras flashed, capturing the moment for posterity. I stood tall, my gaze fixed on some distant point, trying to maintain a professional composure. The camera focused on us, the crew, Dr. Ramirez, the mission specialist, Dr. Chen, the geologist, Major Thompson, the engineer, and then me. "Leading the mission as pilot," the administrator continued, his voice filled with pride, "will be Captain Dean Calloway." The camera zoomed in, close enough that I knew anyone watching would see every detail. My face, tanned from months of outdoor training. My eyes, clear and focused. My expression, determined. I hoped I looked confident, strong, different. Because I was different. I wasn't the same man who'd walked out of that apartment a year ago. Emma's apartment was a mess. Clothes strewn across the floor, takeout containers piled on the coffee table, the remnants of a life lived in quiet desperation. She was sprawled on the couch, mindlessly flipping through channels, the TV a flickering distraction from her own thoughts. She hadn't heard from Dean in a year. Not a word, not a call, not a text. He'd vanished, disappeared completely from her life. She'd tried everything, calling his friends, his family, even contacting the Air Force, but it was like he'd ceased to exist. She'd gone through all the stages of grief, denial, and all the other emotions: anger, bargaining, depression. Now she was just numb, resigned to the fact that she'd messed up, that she'd thrown away the best thing she'd ever had. For what? A fleeting affair, a moment of excitement, a stupid, selfish mistake. The news report caught her attention. Something about NASA, about a mission to Mars. She wasn't really paying attention until... And today we are proud to announce the crew of the Ares 6 mission. She sat up a little straighter. Her interest piqued. She'd always been fascinated by space, by the idea of exploring the unknown. It was something she and Dean used to talk about, back when... Leading the mission as pilot will be Captain Dean Calloway. The remote control slipped from her hand, clattering to the floor. Her breath caught in her throat. Dean? The camera zoomed in on the man on the screen. It was him. It was definitely him. But different. He looked older, harder, more confident. He looked like a man who'd been to hell and back, and come out stronger on the other side. Dean? She whispered, her voice a mixture of disbelief and hope. Could it really be him? The news reporter's voice, a disembodied commentary, filled the silence. Captain Calloway, a decorated Air Force pilot, has been with the program for the past year, undergoing intensive training. A year. He'd been gone for a year, and she hadn't known. She hadn't known anything. He did it, she thought, her mind reeling. He actually did it. He'd gone to NASA. He'd become an astronaut. He was going to Mars. The dream he'd always talked about, the dream she'd dismissed, the dream she'd told him he was too scared to pursue. He was living it. Oh my God, she whispered, tears welling up in her eyes. Tears of regret, of shame, of loss. She'd lost him. She'd thrown him away. And now he was untouchable. A hero, a pioneer, a man on his way to the stars. And she was here, alone, in her messy apartment with nothing but the wreckage of her choices. The contrast was brutal. The irony, almost unbearable. The apartment was shrouded in darkness, the only illumination coming from the flickering images on the television screen. Emma hadn't bothered to turn on any lights. The darkness mirrored the bleakness that had settled over her soul. She sat huddled on the couch, a throw pillow clutched tightly against her chest, the remote control lying abandoned on the floor where it had fallen. The news report had long since ended, replaced by the mindless chatter of a late-night talk show. But Emma remained frozen, unable to move, unable to think. Dean, on his way to Mars. It felt like a cruel joke, a twisted irony that was almost too much to bear. He was finally living his dream, the dream she had so carelessly dismissed, and she was stuck. Stuck in a life she no longer recognized, a life she had actively destroyed. Her hand trembled as she reached for her phone, her fingers fumbling with the familiar sequence of numbers. His old number. The one she had pretended to delete. The one she had told herself she would never need again. A foolish, desperate part of her clung to the hope that maybe, just maybe, it was all a mistake. "Please pick up. Please pick up," she whispered. The words a prayer, a plea, a desperate cry into the void. The phone rang several times, each ring echoing the emptiness in her heart. Each unanswered ring chipped away at the last vestiges of her hope. Finally, the automated voice, cold and indifferent, delivered the final blow. "The number you have dialed is no longer in service. Please check the number and try again." The phone slipped from her numb fingers, landing with a soft thud on the couch cushions. She didn't bother to retrieve it. There was no one to call, no one to talk to, no one who could understand the depth of her despair. "He's really gone," she said aloud, her voice a choked sob. He wasn't just gone, he was unreachable. Beyond her grasp, beyond her influence, beyond her anything. He was a star, shining brightly in the vast expanse of space, and she was just here, grounded, earthbound, alone. She slumped back against the couch, tears streaming silently down her face, hot and bitter. The reality of her situation pressed down on her, suffocating her with its weight. The irreversible consequences of her actions were laid bare before her. "I threw away everything," she thought. The words a bitter, self-recriminating mantra. For what? For a fleeting affair, a moment of mindless pleasure, a selfish desire that had cost her everything. She had traded a lifetime of love and happiness with Dean for a handful of stolen moments with a man who meant nothing to her. She looked around the cluttered apartment, at the evidence of her self-inflicted misery. The mess, the emptiness, the silence. It was a reflection of her inner state. A stark contrast to the images she had seen on the television. Dean, vibrant and alive, surrounded by his crew, on the cusp of a historic achievement. He was ascending, reaching for the stars, while she was trapped in the wreckage of her own making. "I messed up," she said to the empty room, her voice raw with anguish. "I messed up so bad." The words were hollow, inadequate, a pathetic attempt to express the enormity of her regret. There were no do-overs, no second chances. She had made her bed, and now she had to lie in it, alone, forever haunted by the knowledge that she had thrown away the greatest love she had ever known. And it was a loss she would feel for the rest of her life. He was gone, truly and utterly gone, and it was her fault. I strapped myself into the command seat, the familiar restraints feeling comforting, secure. This was it. The culmination of a year of relentless training, a lifetime of dreaming, the moment of truth. "Ares the 6th, this is Houston. You are go for launch. Godspeed." The voice of mission control crackled in my headset, calm and professional. "Roger that, Houston," I replied, my voice equally calm, betraying none of the emotions swirling within me. "Beginning launch sequence." I flipped the switches, pressed the buttons, went through the pre-flight checklist with practiced precision. My hands moved instinctively, my mind focused on the task at hand. There was no room for doubt, for fear, for anything but the mission. The engines roared to life, a deep, visceral rumble that shook the entire spacecraft. I could feel the vibrations in my bones, the immense power beneath me, ready to hurl us into the heavens. Here we go, I thought, a strange sense of calm washing over me. No turning back now. The countdown reached 0, and then liftoff. The force slammed me back into my seat, a crushing weight that made it hard to breathe. The rocket screamed skyward, a fiery arrow piercing the darkness. I watched the monitors, tracking our ascent, my hand steady on the controls. We cleared the tower, then the atmosphere, the sky turning from blue to black, the stars appearing, brighter and sharper than I'd ever seen them before. And then we were in space, weightless, free. I looked out the window at the earth below. A small, fragile blue sphere hanging in the vast emptiness of space. It was beautiful, breathtaking, humbling. I made it, I thought, a wave of emotion washing over me. I actually made it. All the sacrifices, all the pain, all the doubt, it had all been worth it. I thought of Emma, briefly. A flicker of sadness, regret? No, not regret, just acknowledgement. She was part of my past, a chapter that was now closed. No regrets, I thought, turning my gaze away from Earth and towards the infinite expanse of space. No looking back. My future was out there, among the stars, and I was finally ready to embrace it. I was finally free. I was where I always belonged.